Hello, hello. Good morning. Welcome to the ReadWrite Labs webinar, Thursday webinar. Today, we're going to talk about the state of the industry of blockchain. We're going to do that with Kyle Ellicott and Kailash Suresh. Kyle is our expert and the founder of ReadWrite Lab. Very quickly for the people who don't know ReadWrite Labs, we are a research analyst focused on the business of connected things. We are doing four things. We are providing research, both secondary research through our platform, ReadWrite Labs, and then primary research like what you're seeing here. We're constantly surveying the market to understand where the trends are and what's happening. We also provide access to our network of experts and partners in the industry. We have a newsletter. We have several newsletters, about 500,000 industry practitioners of IoT that we're sending newsletter to update them on a weekly basis, so we can provide visibility through that newsletter. And we also provide education as well. And the way we do our research is a combination of three different things. We have an AI technology platform that we've developed over the course of the last 3 years that crawls the internet and grab all the information around thousands of topics and companies. Right now, the last count was around 45,000, and we track that information. We identify the key topics. We talk with our expert about those key topics, and then we show those key topics to on the platform and then to during our webinar. And we're covering mainly 5 topics within the business of connected things. So what we call smart humans, that includes wearables, healthcare, but also smart home and some level of mobility, and the future of work as well. Everything around digital transformation, which we characterize as industrial internet, and then all the verticals application of the Internet of Things in retail, healthcare, and mobility. Mobility is a space by itself. We also are focused on infrastructure with AI, blockchain, security, all the pieces needed to create a solid Internet of Things infrastructure. And today, what we're doing is we are working with Kyle to talk about blockchain within that infrastructure space. So without further ado, let me give the mic to Kyle and Kailash. As a reminder, you can ask questions through either the Q&A or on chat. Kailash is going to run the process and he's going to figure out whether this is a question which is on point, and if it's a question is on point of where Kyle is, he's going to ask a question. If not, it's going to be asked at the end of the presentation. So Kyle and Kailash, go ahead, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Philippe. Hello, good morning, everybody. Excited to kind of jump back into where things are with blockchain. You know, back in November, December last year, we did a webinar similar to this, talking about where the state of blockchain was and where things were going from an infrastructure standpoint following the release, or with a release of our landscape of over 400 different companies in the space shortly after. And now here we are in Q1. A lot has happened, a lot has changed, and we're excited to kind of recap where things are in the industry today. And soon we'll be coming out with the updated landscape here next month for everybody to see where the companies are, where things have moved, and where things have shifted. And for today, we're going to quickly cover a recap of the previous landscape that was launched just before the end of the year, just so everyone can see it and have a good foundation of where things are. From there, we'll jump into emerging trends. So what happened in Q4 2018 to where we are today in Q1, and then also the focus areas of where you should be or where there's a lot of interest, where you should be paying attention to, or where there's a lot of interest right now, if you're either building, investing, or looking to partner in this space. And then at the end, as Philippe mentioned, any questions that may not have been on point for what I was talking about will be followed up at the very end. So to begin, blockchain is probably one of the biggest buzzwords the majority of you are hearing, whether you're in the corporate space, you're in the investing space, or you're a founder. It's talked about constantly. Every single industry report out there right now about technology and about the future of technology for 2019 and 2020 have blockchain included. It has, in some cases, more than doubled in use or doubled in early adoption in the majority of industries out there. I was reading a report from Tata Communications last night that it had actually doubled the amount of usage in the Internet of Things. So blockchain is out there. If you haven't heard it, you're going to hear a lot about it today. But to set an early foundation, because sometimes there is confusion, first and foremost, blockchain is not Bitcoin, and blockchain is not crypto. Cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin are separate from blockchain and what we're going to be talking about today. Blockchain is a very open, distributed ledger that records transactions between two parties in a verified and permanent way. So person A to person B wants to transact, that is recorded, that transaction is set, solid, and forever known. Whereas Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. It's a digital token, it's a digital electronic cash. It is completely different. So for today, think of that. And for blockchain and why blockchain, most people or most companies are looking at blockchain for its capabilities around transparency, which we're going to see a lot of use cases and a lot of companies moving towards that direction. Also using it for trust, for transactions, and also for smart contracts and agreements. Kailash, next slide. All right, landscape recap. Next slide. So last year, Philippe and I were talking about the future of a blockchain and where things were or not. And honestly, it drove me absolutely crazy that there was so much happening in an industry, but no real understanding or focus. So I took the task to search out and review over 1,200 different companies with our team and scale that down to what was real, what was not, what was actually having traction, again, what was not, and put that in this landscape map. We scaled it from 1,200 down to 400 different companies that make up this landscape of blockchain. And we broke those into three main categories: enterprise, consumer. This map provides anybody a very high-level starting point or guide if you're looking to build in the blockchain, of where to go, who your competitors may be, and where things may be trending if you're looking at it from, again, a partnership or an investment. I also wanted to do the same thing for the ecosystem. There are a lot of great support networks and media publications and investors, and we're going to talk a lot more about that, and accelerators that are in this space. And again, there is no real consolidation of those thus far. Next slide. So we broke this up into two parts. Part one is the actual blockchain landscape. Next slide. So the first part is on the consumer. So there's about 160 plus companies that we found in Q4 that were focused around the consumer. These are projects that have been reviewed that are moving forward at that time. Here in Q2, or excuse me, Q1, you're going to see some shifting here where some of these companies may have moved into new industries or categories, and others may not still be there, and others will be added as well. But what's really interesting is here in this area, we saw obviously a huge domination around payments and banking, devices and wallets. Those areas now are starting to get a little bit more rounded. And it's going to be exciting to see here in Q1 where the consolidation has happened and who the new players are. Whereas health, gaming, and media have started to kind of come on an uprise as new companies have started to enter the space. Next slide. Enterprise. So enterprise was very, very interesting. As we broke this space down, and this is, again, another about 200 companies, fintech was absolutely a dominant factor, however, along with supply chain. However, logistics has been a very, very interesting, I would say, category as we move into Q1. That's starting to get a lot of traction, and not just at the startup level, but at the very high level enterprise level as well. We're also starting to see more traction around IP and patents, whereas before, we wrapped this all up in one category, showing governance, IP, and patents. Retail, we've seen a lot of companies that were once high-level retailers in this space. Now that's actually getting more aggressive to smaller retails getting into this space as well, along with advertising. Next slide. Infrastructure. This was the initial baseline for building this landscape. If you're looking at how to get started in blockchain, or where your competitors may be, or any questions, this is the key starting point on this landscape map. Here is where you're going to find the foundational companies or the foundational projects that you will be using, partnering, or investing in to build either as an enterprise or building a consumer solution. And this includes the exchanges where you may be partnering. This included the token company. So if you're looking to develop your own token, or you're looking to build upon that for an application, if you're looking to do smart contracts, this area right here, this core of 240 plus companies, this is where you start on this map. And what's really exciting going into Q1, we saw a few people adjust and change here, but we've got a lot of companies that have really started to round out the technology that they've built. So a lot of these players, their technology has greatly, drastically improved for those that are looking to build in this space. And the blockchain as a service, which is the second to last category on the right, we had about 20 companies in that space. This is now becoming a space that's very, very well-rounded and easier for people to begin testing, or in some cases, early implementation of your blockchain solution. Next slide. Part two. So this is the second half. And if you're looking at the initial landscape, this is the right-hand side of that landscape. And this is the ecosystem. These are all of the initial players in what we called the ecosystem landscape. And so this includes the venture, so capital, both venture and hedge funds, as there's a lot of hedge funds, or were a lot of hedge funds in this space. This includes the incubators and accelerators. If you're a startup looking to get support or begin in this industry, this also includes the media. There's a lot of people covering this industry. There's a lot of news outlets talking about that, but these are the ones that I found that were the most credible and the most relevant if you're looking to get started or keep a pulse on the industry as a whole. Next slide.
So, Kyle, we've got a question from Andrea. The question's about, where do you see the usage of blockchain for autonomous driving and connected cars? Do you see that, and where can they find this in the landscape?
So yes. So Andrea, I will give you a two-part answer. In terms of its usage and adoption, right now we have it listed under the enterprise section. So there's actually a category for autonomous and for connected cars. Going forward, I expect to see this part of the industry really start to transform. And we're actually going to talk a little bit about that here in the emerging trends. But right now it's in enterprise. There's pieces of it that pertain in the infrastructure as well. But I can answer that a little bit further either at the end of the webinar or in a little bit.
That sounds good, Kyle. And just as a reminder, we would be sharing all the slide deck and the webinar recording following the webinar via email. So don't worry about it.
You'll all be able to re-listen to my voice any time of the day. Okay, cool. Go ahead. So this is, now I want to recap the trends that we saw in in Q4 of 2018. And we've talked about a few of these. And why this is important to recap is some of these have actually started to continue or transition into Q1. So back in Q4, there was still questions around, where's the knockout use case for blockchain? What is blockchain going to be? How is it going to stand on its own legs? At the same time, people were looking at how they can create or were creating new business models, leveraging the technology. Governments felt that they had to get involved to support not just their geographical region, but also the companies that were building there. And so you saw a lot of governments not just talking always about, hey, this is blockchain, what do we do? But actually starting to form working groups, putting forward legislative and putting forth action beyond just saying, hey, we're gonna regulate this in some way. Also, we saw a lot of collaboration. There was a ton of consortiums or groups where some of the biggest competitors in their industry would come together to say, hey, this is how we need to look at blockchain, or hey, this is how we need to set standards for what this technology will look for our industry. We also had a lot of traditional enterprise infrastructure companies. So go back to blockchain as a service, your Azures, your AWS on Amazon, starting to move into this space and provide these blockchain services. Cloud and storage now having to service or provide a service for those looking to build in blockchain. And then also the predictive trend we saw was more focus on infrastructure, rounding out that what was being built and paving the way for really the application revolution that now we've got an infrastructure to build on, let's start building upon it. So those were a lot of the trends that we saw moving through Q4 into Q1. And now as we move to Q1, we're starting to see a lot of this stuff take shape. Next slide. All right, so Q1 2019 trends. Again, as I mentioned, a lot of what we saw in Q4 of 2018 has started to make its way through Q1, but in a more active or a more executing way. So now blockchain technology is on the radar or a part of a lot of corporate plans. It's no longer just a thing that's being talked about. It's no longer a question of what is this? Where does this fit in our world? Instead, a lot of corporations, small to large, are having this a part of their growing strategy, whether it's technology, it's innovation, or their customer strategy. They're trying to figure out the best way to implement it and the best people to partner. In Q4, it was just a conversation. It was just being a part of an initiative. Now we're starting to see people actually begin to implement, pilot, not just once, but aggressively pilot different initiatives and programs. Enterprises are moving beyond collaboration and adoption. We're going to get into this on the next slide. Enterprises have no longer said, hey, this is a cool thing, but they're actually moving forward in 2019 with rolling out blockchain technology-based products or initiatives for their internal or external services. Patents. I have read more documentation about people patenting up, if you will, and building a portfolio of patents focused around their core technology or their core products, leveraging blockchain. Whether they're already working on it internally or they're preparing for the future, the patent game is very, very strong right now amongst corporations. Governments governments have stepped up in a very, very big way. A few core governments that we talked about last time and new. So you've got the state of California, which has a huge initiatives around making sure that blockchain technology benefits not just the state, but also the local corporations and the residents. You've got the state of Ohio, who last year announced a $100 million venture fund to focus around new technologies like blockchain and AI. And now that has started to come a little clearer with Blockchain Cleveland, or Blockland, where they are actually in the process of building a campus in Cleveland focused around bringing people together who are building in blockchain and artificial intelligence, and giving them a space to collaborate both as corporations, startups, and using some of that state money to fund these type of projects. State of Colorado is having regular meetings with their local corporations on how blockchain technology will affect the local residents of Colorado, from allowing small businesses to pay taxes, but also how tax structures will work if you're using cryptocurrencies, or if you're leveraging your blockchain technology for recording transactions or taxes as well. The state of Wyoming is pushing forward with legislative, and many others are doing the same. And one I want to call out as well is the country of Italy. In Q4, we saw the European Union have a very large announcement that 7 countries were going to be coming together to focus on what blockchain means for them, for the EU, and what it looks like for the future. Well, the country of Italy has taken a very big step forward and said, not only are we going to be a part of this group, but we're actually going to hire experts in this field to come in and work with us as an individual country to develop these types of technologies, to develop this infrastructure. We're seeing the same thing in Africa. We're seeing the same thing in China, and also in Asia as a whole. So governments have gone from talking and having meetings to actually pushing forward a lot of these initiatives, or a lot of the strategy of how things are going to play out from a technology perspective. Venture capital, when we looked at venture capital in Q4, there was a ton of money.
Kyle, there was a question about patent, which I think
Sure.
is an interesting one, which is that's from Nisarg. I mean, he was asking about white papers, the fact that blockchain are based on white papers. So how can you do patents when all the technology is already there as you on the white paper?
Great question. So first and foremost, I am not a patent lawyer, so I will give you my opinion, which may differ from what a patent lawyer would tell you. But also blockchain technology is not just based on a white paper. The technology itself, when integrated into your technology stack or your products, that together can combine and creates a new patent. So if you're looking at, and we're going to get to this in a minute, someone like Bank of America, who is trying to figure out how to better trace the handling of cash internally within the organization, they have a product or a procedure that they have internally that they've put together. That's something they went out and patented, with blockchain being a piece of the technology stack. That's the best answer I can give you. Again, I'm not a patent attorney. If you really want to see this, check out a patent attorney, or check out Loci, LOCI.io. Both those groups will be able to kind of give you a clearer picture on that. So I apologize for not being able to go into much depth, but seen plenty of people do it, and it seems to work.
And then the other question from Nikhil Mohan, when it comes to private blockchain, are there any cases where blockchain has been deployed in production real life after POC's approval and whatnot?
Great question. So this is actually a controversial topic right now, where a lot of people feel that private blockchains are not going to succeed, where others feel that they will. I do have a few examples I can share after the webinar, but the majority of those private blockchains that I've seen beyond big corporations, someone like IBM, most companies have been leveraging the existing blockchains to test and pilot, and in some cases just run completely on those, rather than having to develop their own blockchain unless there's an internal resource. And some of the corporations we're going to talk about in a minute, I can for sure see developing their own internal blockchain, but unless they have a need or reason, most of them are just leveraging what currently exists. All right, can we go back? Yep, so last three quick trends. Venture capital is keeping pace, and in some cases pushing forward than where they were. In Q4, we saw a lot of venture firms either dominating or testing the waters. Here in Q1, we're seeing new blockchain funds getting created left and right, and we're not talking small money. We're talking a nice first fund of 20 to 30 to 50 to then some funds launching at $100 to $200 million, focused solely on investing in blockchain technology. In the past, it was part of a thesis. Now this is the direct thesis that many are going into. Again, new businesses and models are being created leveraging the technology. That hasn't slowed down, and the infrastructure has continued to improve. Companies have come and gone, and we're starting to see apps starting to come into the picture. We're starting to come into a realistic consumer usage versus just a concept that maybe a consumer would or wouldn't want.
Hey, Kyle, on the prior question, one other thing you may want to add is that companies now are looking at developing private network for IoT. So basically manage the operation at the network level as well. And so in that context, you're going to see private implementation of IoT for companies at the ecosystem level. And in this context, it may be that private blockchain are going to take off. So it may not be something that is going to happen overnight, but if this trend of each company doing their own private network materializes, you may see a private blockchain emerging.
Absolutely, and you're spot on. And the thing about private networks, whatever the technology, whatever the year, private networks can be a very high cost for any type of business. And so there really has to be a very foundational reason to create that type of private network. Either it's a security, potential security risk, or it's a internal test net, whatever it may be. There has to be a very good reason to have to cover those types of costs. I think blockchain and IoT will start to have those costs lowered with things like, cloud services and blockchain as a service. Those things will allow for those private networks, but the old days that we all saw in enterprise where you created a complete internal network, again, it's just a very expensive cost right now. And it'll be something that if I look future forward in terms of trend forecasting, think of it more towards the later half of 2019 and for sure into 2020 as people start to feel ready or their products start to roll out to customers. That's when that type of stuff will come into play. All right. So enterprises have started to step up. We mentioned this in terms of the trends that we saw. This is just a short list of the many corporations that have not just said, hey, we're in, but hey, we're doing something, and we're doing something now, or hey, we've been doing something, here it is, or here's what's happening and rolling out throughout 2019. As you can see, this is not a list of small companies. These are big, either top 5 or global 2000 companies. Starting with one of the more starting from the top, Accenture came out just recently and announced a blockchain-based app in partnership with MasterCard to allow for customers to track and tip, which we'll come back to, but they allow customers to actually track the sourcing of the products they buy, specifically around food, which is very interesting. So if you buy something with your MasterCard, and that's farmer, that group is a part of this network, you'll be able to see exactly where your salad, your carrot, your avocado, whatever it may be, came from, and its journey all the way through. And they want to allow, or will be allowing, for people to tip those farmers and incentivize or reward farmers for making sustainable choices, and for being able to reward those in certain regions that they may want to buy from. This goes into what we talked a little bit about in Q4 around food tech, around agriculture, and around sourcing. This is now becoming actual practice as Accenture and MasterCard come together on this initiative. A lot of the corporations right now on this list have done one thing in common, and that's created transparency. And some of them, it's the first time in their industry, and they're the first movers, which is a big risk, but will probably pay off pretty heavily. So Accenture and MasterCard, for instance, bringing this alignment together around farmers. Apple and Tiffany's, two very large names in the corporate world and in their respected industries. Apple, which has been very secretive on every product they've ever done, have now started filing patents, back to what we talked about, around providing transparency of sourcing of all materials in all of their devices. So that if you're buying a cell phone, for instance, the new latest iPhone, you'll be able to see the entire supply chain of where the cobalt or where the lithium or where the raw materials came from to create that phone. This is a very big issue in this industry of where some of these things are being mined from, where they're coming from, how they were mined, where they were not. Apple is putting their first step forward. We'll see where that comes from, but they have patents and have a very secretive blockchain initiative, which we're not sure where it goes beyond sourcing. Tiffany's, going into that same category around sourcing, has now rolled out, and it will be doing so all throughout 2019, and it will be fully implemented end-to-end by early 2020, and that is the sourcing of all diamonds. So every single diamond that Tiffany mines and sells, customers will be able to see exactly where that diamond came from initially, and then where its journey took place, and then the entire supply chain. So where it started to where it ended in your hands, you'll be able to track that. No one else in the diamond industry at that type of public view has come out and done this. And Tiffany is stepping out saying, we're doing this with what's called the Diamond Source Initiative. Creative or not in terms of its naming, they're doing it. So anything over 0.18 carats or larger will have a detailed serial number etched inside by a laser, invisible to the naked eye, but it'll be recorded on the blockchain. Customers will be able to see when they purchase that diamond, again, where it was mined from, and then where it came from end to end. That's being rolled out now. The full journey will be available by Q1 2020. Again, very, very big step forward for a company of their industry. And this is becoming a common theme. Again, we're seeing this happen with Adidas and other clothing manufacturers. We're seeing this across the board where companies are coming out and saying, hey, you've always questioned or you've always wondered. Here it is. We're opening up the doors, and you can now see where your products have come from that you buy from us, hoping that it will help consumers understand the journey and in some cases creates a strengthened brand loyalty. SoFi, also another big name. SoFi and Coinbase just came together, announcing a partnership because SoFi customers want to buy cryptocurrency and want to leverage, SoFi themselves want to leverage blockchain technology and have come together with Coinbase to do that. HT and Samsung we're going to talk about in a minute. JP Morgan also has getting deeper in the space, and again, we've mentioned where Bank of America is. But the point of this is that enterprises in 2019 are not just talking about pilots. They're not just talking about maybe, maybe not. They're actually putting the step forward and trying to make some of these things a reality for internal and external operations. All right, so the curveball, HTC and Samsung. There has been a little bit of talk for, I would say, the past year and a half about a blockchain phone. Maybe people are bored with the iPhone or really wanted a flexible display. For whatever reason, this has now become, was a small topic and now is a topic. And the reason it's a curveball, and in my opinion, is that we've looked at blockchain technology in some cases around hardware, but now this is a great use case of it entering consumers' hands, and not just as a concept, but available today. The screenshot, or the phone on the right-hand side, is a screenshot of HTC's Exodus phone. It's actually a picture from The Verge. They have a great article detailing the breakdown of what this phone is. But HTC has come out with the Exodus. Today you can buy it with cryptocurrency starting in one day, March 1st. You'll be able to buy it for $700 with any type of currency. So cash, credit, or cryptocurrency. And the idea around this blockchain-based phone is that you'll have a wallet integrated into the phone. It'll also be integrated into the browser. HTC and Opera have come together to allow for micropayments. So now we're not just thinking about, oh, we'll use a wallet like a credit card, but we'll actually be able to do micropayments through browsers and through other apps. And it also opens up the doors for digital apps, or dApps. One of the first applications that's being implemented and really talked about is one called Numbers. And Numbers is an app that will be on your phone when you purchase it that tracks all of your user data, if and where you want, just to be clear. So the amount of steps that you take, you're sleeping, you're driving, whatever you can think of. And it allows you to then sell that data back to third parties and make money off the data that you generate as a user. In wearables and IoT, we always saw this user-generated data, but the only thing we ever wanted was actionable insights. As we started to get some or a little bit of actionable insights, the next question is, well, who owns, or what should I be able to do with my data? It's becoming a very big topic, and not only is it a trend for this quarter, but going forward in 2019, you want to have control, and you also want to have the ability to sell that data to whom you want and profit off of that. And so this is a big step forward in that, as we've seen a few companies in the landscape allowing for that opportunity, but now you're going to be able to do it direct from the phone in your pocket as it's all integrated. The honorable mention is Samsung here, because HTC, again, is out there. It's moving forward. Samsung's Galaxy, it may be a part of it. We're not really sure right now. All they've said on the S10 is that there's going to be a built-in wallet, but we don't have much else beyond that. So blockchain phones are coming. If you're bored with your iPhone, you don't want to pay a ton of money for a flexible display, check out these new types of phones if you're looking to test or get a little bit deeper in this industry.
Yeah, hey, Kyle, on this one, so this is like one of the first example of a trusted thing, right? And so there is a question from John Jefferson, who is asking, so he's asking, 5G wireless technologies are integrating IoT, cellular, and other transport technologies more seamlessly than ever. Is there any discussion about blockchain becoming more integral to the billions of transactions occurring over those networks, and or is that not an application for blockchain, like machine to machine and the like? And it seems like this is like one of the example of what John is describing, which create the internet of trusted things in a way.
John, you took the words right out of my brain. Part of the underlining idea of these phones in their future is that they become a node. They become a connected thing. They become something that can send and receive and push data. They become a new connected sensor in this whole world that you just mentioned in your question. So in terms of where blockchain plays a role in that is, yes, it will allow for a new level of trust between device and device, or sensor and sensor, knowing that the two can for sure talk to each other. They can share certain levels of data, and that data can be recorded as to what they've shared. In terms of 5G, I don't have enough information to comment on where 5G plays in that role. On the IoT side, we know 5G is playing a big role. If anything, it's going to be a big saving grace for the future of connected things, and the speed of which data is shared and those types of devices connect. Blockchain will play a role in terms of, again, trust and security and its transaction. Where blockchain falls a little short right now is speed, and the speed of those types of transactions. So, this phone, the sensors that we've seen, these are all big first steps in that, but we need the infrastructure to kind of push its bounds a little bit further to get the speed a little higher, and those types of transactions will happen at a faster rate. But in summary, yes, blockchain will play a role. It'll play a role in trust and security and allow devices to know who and what to talk about. And this goes back to a question we had earlier around autonomous things and the future of transportation. This is where blockchain also plays a role, not just in its record of who, what, when, where, but who was allowed to talk to each other, who was allowed to share what with each other as well. Thank you, John, for your comment too. Awesome. Capital. So as I mentioned, capital has not slowed down. In the last day, literally, I have read announcements of 3 new blockchain funds that have launched from $200 million, focused 100% on the blockchain industry alone. Not AI, not IoT, but blockchain specifically, and the future of its infrastructure and the future of its underlying technology. This is going to be a continuing thread in the new landscape. We have already probably 10, maybe 20 new funds that will be added in this same area. In terms of what's already been out there, a lot of investors are actually doubling down. The University of Michigan just announced that they are doubling down in Andreessen Horowitz crypto fund. Now, why this is important, again, we set the stage early that blockchain and crypto, we were only going to talk about blockchain, but I want to bring this up. You have a multi-billion-dollar endowment fund at a top university saying, we believe in the future of this type of technology so much that we're willing to double dip and ensure its future. That you're going to see a continuation around also in blockchain, where investors have said, we're going to be a part of fund 2, we're going to be a part of your future funds. We see that this is an underlying technology we can't miss, and we're in. We're also seeing the rise of new accelerators. Berkeley just announced a new accelerator for Berkeley based on their big Berkeley blockchain initiative. We're also seeing plug and play get into this. We're also seeing a rise in accelerators throughout Southeast Asia, Australia, stepping up to the plate saying, hey, we're here to support you and your business as you grow as a startup. So look for that. UNICEF, I also wanted to bring this up. Those that are not traditional but have made some investments have started to get into this space. UNICEF just invested in 6 new projects, looking to how blockchain will help sustainability and some of their efforts as well. Next. Acquisitions. In the past quarter, we saw quite a few acquisitions, some controversial, some not. I don't want to get into the whole Coinbase acquisition. I know that there's a lot of questions around the fact that Coinbase bought a research firm. That's for another conversation, another day. But the point is that we are starting to see a lot of M&A in this space, whether it's big or small, and that's a consolidation factor. We're seeing a lot of this tech come together to create better and more defined technologies for the future of the industry. So I expect this to be a continuing trend throughout 2019. Next. All right, opportunity, one more. So focus and opportunities areas, just as in summary, we talked a little bit about commodities, so diamond, cobalt, raw materials, but this is not something that's slowing down. Oil and gas have continually been talked about. There is a need for implementation of blockchain technology around commodities. So if you're looking to build or you're looking to pay attention, these are definitely industries, and that's one of them. If I were a startup today, this is an area that I would start to give a little bit of time to. Content and licensing. I mentioned this around the Exodus HTC's phone and what they're doing around content. There's several startups that are starting to rise on how to monetize, provide ownership to your content and then allow you as the owner to license it. They're also doing that for corporations, and it's actually working. Kodak One is actually the blockchain firm of Kodak. They started doing this around licensing of photos and leveraging blockchain technology to track and to trace. They have generated over $1 million US in revenue in the last year around licensing of photos. So if you're thinking I'm a founder, what do I do? What can I focus in? Or you're a media company or you're an IoT company with data, look at this industry heavily. Look at how other companies are starting to monetize content and how they're looking to give licensing opportunities back to those creators. We're seeing this in music. We're seeing this throughout all of entertainment. We're seeing this in book publishing, photos. I mean, you name it. Anything that has been licensed is quickly or slowly starting to move towards leveraging blockchain for more profitability. Next is probably one of my favorite, and poor Philippe has to deal with me talking about this constantly. Digital assets and collectibles. I am so bullish on this area, both as an opportunity and I think as an investment area personally. Digital assets, taking anything and turning it to a digital form and being able to monitor and track that. Collectibles. We saw this very early with CryptoKitties, and again, another story for another day. But now this is actually starting to shape up where people are looking at, digital art. They're looking at the, new and ideal baseball card or football card, or how we can take what was a sports athlete card, bring that digital, and in turn provide fan experiences, turn into free tickets, and also add in fantasy sports. Collectibles are becoming a thing, and it will be a very, very big, profitable opportunity for companies as they get in. You can look at companies like Hashleets doing this on the NFL side. There are tons of companies that are starting to get into this in creating stickers or art. So again, digital assets, collectibles, I could talk about it for days. I'm very bullish on it. Check it out. Gaming, still trying to figure out where that world goes, but gaming from a traditional sense of creating games, recording what happens, to sports betting or general game betting as well. IoT, Philippe mentioned this. Jeff, you brought this up as a question. IoT is not going away. The usage of the Internet of Things has doubled from 2018 into 2019. We're seeing more companies use blockchain as a part of their technology stack or future of it, with the idea of the Internet of Trusted things. And this comes a term from Kaleido Insights. It's not going to slow down. You got a ton of endpoints, a ton of sensors, and a ton of data going back and forth. Blockchain needs to be a part of that. So look forward to that. And then logistics and shipping. FedEx and UPS, this is very key. FedEx and UPS have come out and both said, we're testing, we're trying to figure out what is the mega use case around this. We're not sure if it's going to happen this year, but we know blockchain will be a part of the future of our industry. Big red alert for anybody looking to build or who's in this industry. You have the two biggest shipping companies in the world looking to figure out how to best implement or who to best work with in this industry. Shipping and logistics are not going away. So to me, these are the 6 areas and opportunities that going into Q1, going into Q2 for 2019, pay attention to or start looking at either from an investment or a starting foundational point. There we go.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kyle. And now we're open out to questions. Question from Richard. Right. So you did talk to us about how there are more hedge funds coming up, how the venture world is reacting to the blockchain this quarter. So what are the barriers to acceptance and implementations, and how has that really changed over the last quarter?
So I'm sorry, Kailash, say that last part one more time.
What are the barriers to acceptance and implementation, and how has it really changed over the last quarter?
Great question. So last in Q4, we talked a little bit about what the blockers were and why implementation can be difficult. And we talked about performance, scalability, complexity, education, and governance. How has that changed? Education. People have become more educated or have done more research and starting to understand how this fits in their technology stack. So from Q4 to Q1, people are more educated than they have been before. Performance is still an issue. That's not going away right now. People are working on that, but performance is still an issue. Scalability is still an issue. Complexity is still an issue. I think, again, where this has come from is that a lot of companies and their teams internally have really become more educated. On the venture side, same thing. People have become more educated. People have started to see the waves of companies, coming and disappearing, and they're starting to see shape of what this industry really is. So to me, Richard, to answer your question, it's a big step for education and understanding where this industry has come from and where it is. But some of those performance and scalability issues still exist, and that's going to be fixed over, the coming years. But that would be my thought.
Awesome. So we have a question from Clive. There's been a lot of chatter around the power consumption to really run the blockchain, especially when it comes to data mining, right? So how do you see this kind of developing over time? The concerns around power and electrical usage for the implementation of blockchain.
So it's a great question. I mean, blockchain, a lot of the power usage has more come from around, and mining specifically has come from around cryptocurrencies. But nonetheless, in my personal opinion, I think that, we'll get more efficient with energy usage. We'll get more efficient with the core hard or soft technology, and it will just improve. I don't really have a better answer than that. I mean, it's something that just is going to have to get better. We're just going to have to get a better grid. We're going to have to get more efficient at the grid that we use today. So there's a few companies working on that efficiency, but it's just something we're dealing with right now.
Awesome. We have a comment from Ronald around also adding HR, pharma, and IT operation, IT tools, right? Mm-hmm. So blockchain applications in this space. Do you have any call-outs of companies in this space providing a solution?
So what I'll say, Ronald, you're absolutely spot on. I saw another comment as well around healthcare. You guys are all spot on, and there's a ton of industries where we are on the up and up of this technology being used. Pharma is a perfect example, which kind of goes back to sourcing. Pharmaceuticals, cannabis, food, these are all areas I talked about a little bit in Q4 that been a little quiet, not totally, but have been a little quiet in Q1, and I expect to be bigger in Q2. That absolutely blockchain is going to be a very significant role in that as well. And in terms of companies, I'm going to wait till the landscape releases because there's a few companies in that that I think will be pretty exciting to talk about. But healthcare as well, HR, absolutely. And there's HR, I think, is going to be a very fun industry if you're building in it, and being able to track and monitor not just your employment process or hiring process, but also everything that comes through in terms of bonuses, terms of salaries, resumes, and how all that's tracked and progresses as well. So great.
Awesome. We have an anonymous attendee who wants to know about security issues around blockchain. There have been a lot of, there's been a lot of chatter in this space, especially with exchanges getting hacked. But now there are a couple of articles around the core technology itself getting hacked. Have you been able to look into these?
Yeah, so I've only done a little bit of research, to be very honest, in this area, because a lot of the security issues have come from the crypto side, as mentioned around the exchanges. At any point, a technology is always going to have security flaws. If anything, security will become. I had a great reference from a friend. If data is the new oil, security is the new barrel, and that security is going to be a growing concern, and not just for blockchain technology, but for IoT, for everything we do, because it's kind of been forgotten. And because we have so much data being transferred and communicated between different endpoints, it's going to have to be there. So the industry is still early and growing. It's still trying to figure out its ways. So security will be tested as it is in any industry. And I think we'll have some companies that come out that provide new fixes, but it's just going to be a growing concern. However, it does provide an added layer of security to what does not exist today. And this was to Philippe and some of the other earlier questions we had around IoT. It provides an added level of security that IoT does not have today. And being able to communicate between devices is one example of that.
Yep. We have a question around, the definition of blockchain itself, and if you agree with it. According to Wikipedia, a blockchain is a decentralized, distributed, and public digital ledger that is used to record transactions across many computers so that any involved record cannot be altered retroactively without the alteration of subsequent blocks. Do you agree completely with this? Do you see any additions or deletions?
It's Wikipedia. I do agree with it. I think that definition will evolve over time as the technology itself does. We saw this with IoT. IoT does not exist, 5 years ago. It was the term, excuse me. We went from wearables to wearables and connected devices to the Internet of Things to the Internet of Everything to connected devices to now the Internet of Trusted Things. It's at its core, the definition is what blockchain technology does provide. And if the technology evolves, so will the definition. But as of today, yeah, agreed.
Maybe one last question, and this is from Nikhil. Right. So when you look at the adoption of the blockchain ecosystem, what should organizations really be doing today to drive adoption? You mentioned earlier that education is one of it, right? Especially with in case of government and regulatory bodies getting involved in a couple of these use cases. How do you really see organization increasing and driving adoption?
First and foremost, if you are an executive or you are a corporation, just get involved. Get involved in a consortium, get involved in a group, get involved with your local government. Just start educating yourself and providing others use cases around how this technology could be applied. Again, get involved and get educated. And in terms of how you're going to push it forward, do it. Don't just talk about it in a press release. Go out there and actually start implementing. Try again and start rolling it out. So get yourself educated, join a group and support each other, and then actually do something. Don't just release a press release.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kyle. We have plenty of, I think we have about 8 to 10 more questions which weren't answered. Don't worry about it. We shall get back to you. We probably blog about this and or talk about this during our next quarterly update. Thank you so much for your time. It's 10. Following this webinar, we shall send you a quick survey, and we request you all to complete that and share your comments with us. We really look forward to that. Kyle, thank you so much for your time. It was a great session. Thank you so much, Philippe, for your time and for hosting us.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Kailash. Thanks, Philippe.